Hello Miracle Fighters and welcome back to the Team Miracle 4 channel. Today, as per the title, I'll be doing a deck profile on Roxy's Genesis Yatagarasu deck. This is Roxy's newest Genesis deck that came alongside Himiko Reverse, and it introduces a new kind of playstyle to Genesis. Technically, Fenrir has already done this, but Yatagarasu takes it one step further. And so what the new Yatagarasu in V Premium focuses on is soul blasting cards and activating abilities based on the total grades of the cards that you soul blasted. So this deck can also pull off an insane 7 attack combo, which I will show off very soon, right, using a combination of the Regalia cards with Yatagarasu. So without further ado, let's get right into the deck. Okay, so our starter is Artemis. You can play anything, doesn't matter which starter you go for. Okay, so Genesis has a lot of good looking starters, can be very hard to choose which one you want. I like the bird, but Roxy likes Artemis. So there we have it. And let's begin with our main boss. 4 copies of the Sunlight Goddess Yatagarasu. Okay, so she's at 4 copies here. Okay, so let's have a look at her. So Yatagarasu is an old card retrained in the V format, and her current V Premium ability resembles that of her old one, but definitely much stronger. So what she does is, on attack, when she attacks on Vanguard Circle, you may counterblast 1 and soul blast 3. Then, depending on the sum of the grades of the cards that you soul blasted for this cost, you can activate the following abilities. If you soul blasted 5 or more, all of her front row units, including herself, get power plus 10,000 until end of turn. If you soul blasted a grade of total 7 or more, on top of that, you get to choose 2 of her rear guards and stand them. And if you soul blasted 9 or more, you get to draw 2 cards. So your main goal with this effect is usually to hit at least 7. So if you soul blast a grade total of 7, which is generally a grade 3 and 2 grade 2s, right? It means you get to give the front row plus 10,000 power and restand 2 rear guards, which is most of the time your 2 rear guards in the front row, giving you a total of 5 attacks with power gain. Soul blasting 9 grades is not super needed, but if you can go for it, definitely go for it, because the draw 2 is very helpful in this deck, which may not have that much draw power. Soul blasting 9 means that you need to soul blast a total of 3 grade 3s, which actually isn't that difficult because of the new support cards that we have for Genesis, as well as some of the cards that Roxy has selected from previous sets that can help with selective soul charging. So yeah, with this skill in mind, what the rest of this deck aims to do basically is to craft your soul such that you can consistently have your high grade units like your grade 3s and your grade 2s in your soul. Besides this offensive ability, Yatagarasu also has a second defensive effect. When your guardian is placed on the guardian circle, obviously, you may soul blast 3 and give that unit plus 10,000 shield. This is a very powerful effect that can greatly increase your defensive capabilities. This effect essentially turns your 5k guards into 15k guards, and your 15k guards into 25k guards. Not just that, if your hand is clogged with grade 3s, you can still guard with the grade 3s and use Yatagarasu's effect to make them 10k shields. Meaning you can turn dead cards into, shield value cards. Of course, since it's a soul blast 3, we have to use it sparingly and at the right time, unless you have a ton of soul, since Yatagarasu also requires you to soul blast 3 for her first effect, her main effect. So yeah, this defensive ability is a nice option. You don't always use it, but when the time is right and you do need a bit more shield to work with, that defensive ability can really come in handy. So yep, that's 4 copies of Yatagarasu. She has both offensive and defensive abilities, which I really like. Let's continue with the grade 3s. Our next grade 3 serves as both a backup ride and as our best rearguard attacker, and that is the 4 copies of Cosmic Regalia CEO Yggdrasil, one of the best cards in V Premium Genesis. Let's have a look at her ability. So what she does is continuous on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. All rearguards with a Divine Gauge get boost, and then if she's on Vanguard Circle and it is your opponent's turn, those rearguards cannot be affected by your opponent's cards. So yes, Divine Gauge will be used in this deck. It won't be the main focus, but you kind of need it for your main combo. So how do you get Divine Gauge? Well, that comes in our second ability, which is activated, Counterblast 1. You can search your deck for up to 1 of Yggdrasil's mate, which is the Regalia of Fate Norn over here. Right. and collar to rearguard circle. Then choose up to one rearguard and give it a divine gauge. So what is a divine gauge? Divine gauge is basically a card that you put from your soul face down under one of your rearguards. So with Yggdrasil, you have the ability to tutor out Norn from your deck, engage Norn so that she can boost Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil is super important in this deck because she calls out Norn, who is the enabler of this deck's strongest attack combo. And because of Yggdrasil's Vanguard ability, if you end up riding her, she's also pretty decent because she can give you field immunity, and along with Norn, she can also close games herself. So since Norn is so important, let's have a look at her before we start going into our combo. So Norn is a grade 2 with 2 abilities. The first is on both Vanguard and Rearguard Circle activated, you may counterblast 1, draw a card, and give one of the units a divine gauge. If you did, soul charge 2. Now this is a very good effect that gives you some draw power and some soul charge. Yatagarasu, as I've already gone through her ability, only wants units with high grades in the soul. Hence, what Norn kind of does with the divine gauge is if you have like grade 0s or triggers or just like grade 1s in your soul, like maybe your starter or some random trigger that you soul charge from other effects, you can actually use them as divine gauge and hope to soul charge something with higher grade from the deck. In a way, it's an exchange of cards in soul from a lower grade to a potentially higher grade card. Being an activated ability is also really nice because it means that as long as you have Norn on the field, every single turn you can get a potential +1 to hand, potential soul charge, and also be able to spread gauge throughout the field, and most importantly to herself so that she can activate her second ability. And her second ability is, at the end of the battle that she boosted a unit with Regalia in its card name, you may discard a card from her hand and one of her divine gauge. If you do, restand the boosted unit, and that unit gets plus 10k and minus 1 drive until the end of turn. Norn is a grade 2, so the only way for her to boost is if you pair her up with Yggdrasil. Essentially, you want to have a column of Yggdrasil and Norn like that, so that you can have a restanding Yggdrasil attack for a minimum 23k power, and twice, right? So back to Yggdrasil, as I mentioned, she can work on Vanguard Circle. So if you end up riding her, if you have a Norn behind her with Gauge, you can actually have a restanding Vanguard. And because we are a Force clan, Genesis is a Force clan, we have access to Force 2. So in a way, if you don't ride into Yatagarasu, you might still have a chance of winning with just because you have a restanding Vanguard like that. However, since we are a Yatagarasu deck, we generally want to be riding into Yatagarasu and use Yggdrasil and Norn as rearguards. In fact, Yggdrasil and Norn's mini combo is also part of this deck's ultimate 7 attack combo. So before I go through the rest of the deck, let's have a look at the combo first and see what this deck can do at its peak. Okay, so for the 7 attack combo, basically what you want is you want to have Yatagarasu as the Vanguard. So you ride into Yatagarasu, you put a Force 2 on the rearguard, and then you will need 2 columns of Yggdrasil and Norn. So it's good that Yggdrasil can search out Norn. It means that you don't really need to draw into 2 Yggdrasils and 2 Norns. If you draw into 1 Yggdrasil, it means that if you have the open counterblast, you can search your deck out for the Norn. And yeah, so basically you just need something like this, right? Let's say you use Yggdrasil's effect to maybe gauge your Norns, or maybe you use Norn's effect to counterblast 1 and gauge your gauge some of the units and soul charge 2. Okay, so maybe you have something like that. So this will give your Norns the ability to boost. So for this combo, you also need to have at least a grade 3 and 2 grade 2s in soul, so that you can pay the so that you can soul blast a total of grade 7. 9 would be the best, but let's say we just do 7, right? So right now we do have the soul set up for 7, so that's good. Okay, so with 1 counterblast, just nice, we can begin our attack step. So first you will attack with your Yggdrasil. That'll be just 13k. You can snipe like rear guards or whatnot. You can just attack the Vanguard for a 5k guard. This will be 13 2 crits. Okay, so this is more crucial for your opponents to guard. And then you will swing with the Vanguard. So this is the 3rd attack. Use Yatagarasu's on attack skill, counterblast 1, so blast 3. So as I've said, you do need at least 1 grade 3 and 2 grade 2s in your soul. So something like that. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This will give the front row plus 10,000 power, and you get to stand 2 rear guards. So you stand the 2 rear guards in your front row like that. So third attack, 23k. You can check the twin drive. Oh, okay, a heal trigger. Maybe we cannot heal, but we can give the power to something. Let's just give it to the double crit Yggdrasil. Okay, so that was a third attack, the Vanguard attack. Now you move on to your rear guards. So let's say we want to go for this one first. 13, 23 because of Yatagarasu's 10k buff. Boosted by a Norn because he has a gauge. That will make this column 23, 33. So 33 is like a 25k guard, which is a pretty high number. It's a 2-card guard essentially. So yes, 33. And then with Norn's effect, at the end of the battle that boosted a Regalia, you can remove her gauge, plus discard a card from your hand, restand the boosted unit. And then you can swing again for, this will be 23. With Norn's effect, that's plus 10,000 to Yggdrasil, that's 33 again. So once again, forcing up 2 cards from the opponents or forcing them to take 1 more damage. And then you move on to your more lethal column. So this one has the trigger effect, which is good. So we go 23 with Yatagarasu, 33 with the trigger, and 43 with Norn's boost. 43 double crit because it's force 2. And this is actually the 6th attack. So at the end of the battle, same thing, you use Norn's effect, discard card, restand Yggdrasil, give her plus 10,000 power, and she swings for the same amount, 43 2 crits. And 43 is a 25k guard. Sorry, a 35k guard. So that's pretty high. That's like, if your opponents don't play 20k shields, that would be like a 3-card guard, right? So yes, that's essentially how the combo works. And you technically don't need to keep any cards in hand for this combo, because the 2 cards that you'll be discarding for Norn's effect, you can just get them for your drive checks. And the nice part about Yatagarasu is that she draws 2 if you Soul Blast 9. So those 2 cards can sort of be used to pay for Norn's discard cost. So yes, that's the pretty powerful 7 attack combo that you can do with this deck. It's a very feasible combo. And if you do pull it off, especially if you have like multiple force markers on the field, like maybe second grade 3 turn onwards or whatnot, then the chances of you killing that turn is very, very high. So yep, that's the combo. It's a pretty insane one. We do have other ways of playing Yatagarasu, but I'll talk about those in the alternative section after we go through the rest of the deck. So for now, this is what we have. Oh yeah, and it's 4 copies of Norn, by the way, to go along with the 4 copies of Yggdrasil. Okay, so back to the grade 3s. We are not done with the grade 3s, even though there's already 8 here. Our last normal unit grade 3 is the mythical destroyer beast, Vanargandr. So yes, we don't have an actual physical copy of Vanargandr yet. It's coming, right? We've already bought our 4 copies of him. We just don't have him yet. But anyways, what does Vanargandr do? Well, his effect is, on plays on both Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, you can Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's Rearguards and retire it. If it was placed on Vanguard Circle, you retire all the opponent's Rearguards instead. Vanargandr is a very niche card that sometimes can come in really handy, especially if the opponent tries to rush you down or if you're up against a Rearguard reliant deck that cannot recover from a board wipe. You can just go into this guy. Otherwise, in this deck, you usually call him to Rearguard, and a targeted retire is also pretty good, since you can use it to clear some pesky Rearguards. However, its main purpose in this deck is for its second ability, which is at the end of the battle that it attacked. You can put Vanargandr into your soul. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 card to the top, 1 to the soul, and 1 to the bottom. Generally, with the way that Yatagarasu plays, because you'll be restanding your Rearguards, you'll find yourself not being able to use Vanargandr actually to stack triggers for a drive check, because you want to be restanding Vanargandr. So how Vanargandr is actually used in this deck is for you to stack defensive triggers, and to some that might seem like it's anti-synergy, right? It's very awkward how Vanargandr and Yatagarasu interacts, but that's just how it is. even though the two cards don't really interact very well together, but I think Vanargandr's Self Soul Charge is still really good and free, and sets up for the next turn very well as well. Stacking defensives honestly is not too bad to give the deck a bit more defensive power. And I guess for now he's really the only grade 3 in Genesis that can move into Soul himself, so that's really the main reason that you'll be playing him. It's unfortunate that we can't use him to its fullest, but so far he does his intended job, and I guess his first effect also helps you to activate certain grade 1s in his deck. So yeah, he does have his uses in his deck. For now we are playing 4 copies of Vanargandr. Okay. And that basically rounds up the grade 3s. So quite a fair bit of grade 3s, 12 grade 3 normal units, because you know Yatagarasu wants to soul blast high grade units. You want to play as many grade 3s as you possibly can to sort of maximize the chances of soul charging grade 3s and seeing, you know, grade 3s in soul. So yeah, with the grade 3s out of the way, we can move on to the grade 2s. I've already talked about Norn, so we can skip her. Let's move on to the other grade 2. And this is the Starry Bow, or rather Strong Bow of the Starry Night, Ulixis. And we play him at 4 copies. Now his effect is, at the end of the battle that he attacked the Vanguard on rearguard circle, you can move him into the Soul, draw a card, and Soul Charge 1. Ulixis is a no-brainer for this deck because he Soul Charges himself essentially, and he's a grade 2. So with Yatagarasu, as I've said, you want to be Soul Blasting a minimum of 7, which comprises, you know, 1 grade 3 and 2 grade 2s. So having a grade 2 that can move itself into the Soul is really good in setting up Yatagarasu. He's a bit like a grade 2 version of Vanargandr, except that he's actually easier to use and can contribute to your grade 2 rush as well. Generally, you want to see him early so you can start pushing whilst increasing the grades of cards in your Soul and drawing cards. Ulixis also kind of works with Vanargandr as well, if you put both of them in the front row, right? In that if you don't see a defensive with Vanargandr's effect at the end of the battle that he attacked, what you can do is you can use Ulixis to just draw that card away. Or if you somehow happen to see something that you need in your hand, you can stack it on the top of the deck with Vanargandr and use Ulixis to draw it away. So yeah, that's one way you can combo these two guys together. So yes, that's 4 copies of Ulixis. Really good card for this deck. And then our final grade 2 that we play is the Prometheus of Dancing Lights. So Prometheus has 2 abilities. The first is on place. You may look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 into your Soul and 1 on the top. So this is once again good for selective Soul Charging and trigger stacking. Prometheus works on Vanguard Circle as well, so if you don't want to ride into Norn, because you know Norn is such a good booster, right? She's intended to be like one of the main boosters, and you also don't want to ride into Ulixis. So Prometheus kind of is like the main grade 2 ride, if you see him, for this deck. Prometheus also has a second ability, which is when he attacks on rearguard circle, you can give your Vanguard and himself plus 5000 power until the end of turn. Now this ability has synergy with Yatagarasu. So since this ability activates on attack, if you use Yatagarasu to withstand him and attack again, he can actually get twice of the intended power increase. So what you can do is you attack with him first, 15. You give 5k to Yatagarasu, then Yatagarasu attacks for 18, withstand him. So he keeps the 5k from his first attack, and on his second attack, he will get another 5k, meaning he's about 20 or 30k on his own. Because he also powers up Yatagarasu on his swing, it makes your Vanguard attack slightly more powerful and not as easy to guard. Instead of a 23k Vanguard attack, you now have a 28k Vanguard attack. That 5k really makes a difference in terms of guarding. Prometheus is also good if your Vanguard is CEO Yggdrasil, because a restanding Vanguard with the added plus 5k means that you can use it twice. So yes, that's 2 copies of Prometheus of Dancing Lights. Just a free selective Soul Charge and free power gain, grade 2, it's pretty good. And that's pretty much it for the grade 2s, so 10 grade 2s and 12 grade 3s normal units. Now we can move on to our grade 1s. We'll start off first with 4 copies of this new card from V-Clan collection, the latest V-Clan collection, and that is 4 copies of the Apple Witch Cider. Now she's a retrain of an old card actually. She's one of the best cards, best support cards that I feel Genesis has for this deck and Himiko reverse. So what she does is, at the end of the battle that she boosted, you may either Soul Charge 1 and return her to hand, or Soul Charge 2. This ability allows you to have a recurring Soul Charger every single turn. Being able to return to hand means that she can help to boost an attack and still be used for guarding if need be the following turn. This is very apt for her second effect, which is, when placed on Guardian Circle, you may put a card from your hand into your soul and give her plus 5k shield until the end of battle for every 3 cards in your soul. This is very similar to Yatagarasu in that she provides additional defense when needed. If you have 3 soul and you use her Guardian Circle ability, she goes up to 15k shield. If you have 6 soul, which isn't difficult to achieve also, she goes up to 20k shield, and that's pretty good. The most important part, however, is the fact that you can put any card from your hand into your soul. This works well with bosses like Himiko because you can selectively put a crit or a draw into your soul to set up for Himiko. Similarly for Yatagarasu, you can use her to put in high grade units like extra grade 3s or grade 2s into your soul to set up for Yatagarasu's Soul Blast cost the following turn. Because you're putting in high grade units into your soul for Cider generally, you're actually converting cards with low shield value into additional guard, making your guarding more efficient, and whilst also crafting the perfect soul for your offensive plays. All in all, Cider is just a really important grade 1 for this deck, and you need her at 4 copies. Other than the Apple Witch, we also have the Witch of Oranges, Valencia. So we play 2 copies of Valencia. She serves a similar role to Cider in that she can also help to selectively soul charge cards. What she does is, firstly, when put from the soul into the drop during your main phase, you can bind her as cost. If you do, choose 2 cards from the drop, put one of them into your soul and the other to the bottom. So, firstly, very good selective soul charge. Basically, you can put like grade 3s or 2s that you have in your drop that you probably used for maybe guarding, or you used to soul blast out the previous turn with Yatagarasu, right? And then put them back into the soul to reuse them. In a way, you can think of soul blasting her as trading herself for a higher grade unit in your soul. Not just that, but she also has a recycle aspect to her ability. Being able to put any card from the drop to the bottom of the deck means that you can return cards like Triggers back to your deck, or important units like Norn back into your deck to be searched out by Yggdrasil in following turns. Although she doesn't shuffle, but cards like Yggdrasil and your grade 3 searchers do, so there is that. Valencia might seem like the perfect support card, but if you look closely at the ability, you realize that actually she requires herself to be soul blasted out during the main phase. Now if we go back to Yatagarasu's effect, Yatagarasu actually soul blasts during the battle phase, right when she attacks. So how do we actually activate Valencia in that case? Well, here's where Vanargandr comes in. So Vanargandr's on plays Soul Blast is during the main phase, and that will actually help to trigger Valencia. You can just use Vanargandr to Soul Blast Valencia during the main phase to activate Valencia's own effect. And that's also one of the reasons why Vanargandr is still in this deck, because he's one of the cheapest main phase Soul Blasts that Genesis has, to pair up with Valencia's really good selective Soul Charge effect. Valencia also has a second ability, which is at the end of the battle that she boosted, you can put 2 rear guards in the same column as her into your soul and draw a card. So what you can do is use her to boost like a grade 3 or grade 2, and then soul charge both into the soul to set up the soul count for Yatagarasu. Now she can't really be used as a booster for Vanargandr or Ulixis because those cards move into the soul by their own effects, but you can use her to boost like a Prometheus or extra Yatagarasus on the field or Norns that you might end up calling. It's not the most optimal, but she's there for the emergency selective soul charge if you need to. But generally most of the time you use her is for the first effect. And because of that, it kind of makes her a good right target as well. So yeah, that's our 2 copies of Valencia. Next, we have 1 copy of White Brush Witch Arctic. So Arctic is our one-off in this deck because there's not much space for her, but I really wanted to include her, or rather we really wanted to include her. She's basically a grade 1 version of Prometheus. On place, top two, one to soul and the other to top, so deck stacking and selective soul charging. But she's not just good for that effect, she also has a really useful second ability, which is once per turn, when your Vanguard attacks, she gives both herself and the Vanguard plus 5k power. So usually when Roxy draws into her, she'll just plop her in the back row and basically just give your Vanguard free power whenever your Vanguard attacks. So free power plus selective soul charge when on placed, I think she's a really decent card as well. Unfortunately, not much space to play additional copies of her. So for now, she's just a one-off. And lastly, for our grade 1s, we end off with 4 copies of the Genesis Grade 3 Searcher, the Mythic Beast Skull. So nothing much to explain for this. Grade 3 Surging is super good, especially for a deck like this where your grade 3s are your key pieces, right? And we also want to be able to write into Yatagarasu consistently, so having the grade 3 Surge for Yatagarasu is very important. All the grade 3s are very useful in this deck, so it doesn't matter what you find with Skull, generally you want to be adding those grade 3s into your hand anyways. Skull also shuffles the deck for free, so as I've mentioned when I was talking about Valencia, you can use this combined with Valencia to kind of return important units from the drop zone to your deck, or triggers from the drop zone back into your deck. And of course, not to forget, Skull also gets plus 5k when you Soul Blast cards, making it a 13k booster or attacker. And that's pretty much it for the normal units. As you can see, there's a lot of selective soul charging, a lot of cards that help you put the right cards into your soul for Yatagarasu's effect. So now that we have the normal units covered, we can move on to our trigger units. Okay, so for our trigger units, basically Roxy is playing the tried and tested 4 Hue Guards, 4 draw PGs, and 8 regular crits trigger lineup. Right, so very basic but a very effective lineup. Hue Guardians are especially useful in this deck because of their grade. They are grade 3s. This actually gives us a higher chance of being able to Soul Blast 7 or even 9 for Yatagarasu. So with Hue Guardians, we have what? 4, 8, 12, 16 grade 3s in this deck. It's quite a lot, right? And in fact, since Hue Guardians are usually used for guarding early, what you can do after that is use cards like Valencia to put them from the drop zone into the soul. So yeah, soul charging heals no longer feel as bad in this deck. In fact, you rather soul charge your heals as compared to your other triggers, which is kind of different from the Himiko deck, which wants to soul charge crits and draws rather than heals. So that's pretty interesting. And then for the draw PGs, you do need draw PGs, right? You do need PGs basically, and a bit of draw power can help. And then 8 crits, because you want to be putting out pressure. 8 crits. Crits also work very well with freestanding units like Yggdrasil and Norn, so there is that as well. So yep, that's essentially the entire deck list. So now that we have the deck profile complete, we can actually talk a bit about alternatives. So Yatagarasu is a pretty generic Genesis boss that can work with a lot of different cards in this clan. The Yatagarasu / Yggdrasil build is just one out of a few possible builds that you guys can consider. So if you want to try something different, there's also a build focusing on Iwanagahime and Glibner. So Iwanagahime is an old grade 3 from Genesis with this skill, activated, Soul Blast 3. Put a card from your hand into your soul, draw a card, and add power to her equal to double the shield value of the card put into soul with this ability. So in a build that uses Iwanagahime as the main attacker, you will play Crit Sentinels. So what you aim to do basically is to put the Crit Sentinel into soul with her effect, give her plus 60k power, making her 73k, and swing with her twice using Yatagarasu. It's an insane power play, comparable with the 7 attack combo in this deck, and with Force 2 can easily kill the opponents if they don't have PGs. Now even if you don't put Crit Sentinels, even if you put just regular triggers, like 15k triggers, she gets a plus 30k buff. If you put like grade 2s or 1s, she gets a minimum 10k buff, making her 23k. which is still pretty decent number. And because you can also selectively put cards into your soul, you can also use her to kind of set up for Yatagarasu again the following turn. So yeah, Iwanagahime is a pretty decent grade 3 that you can play alongside Yatagarasu. The one con though for Iwanagahime is maybe her Soul Blast cost. Depending on how many cards that you play that can Soul Charge, right? The Soul Blast 3 might conflict with Yatagarasu's own Soul Blast 3. So essentially, if you want to use both on the same turn, you need to have 6 Soul, and how easy you can sustain the 6 Soul every single turn is another matter entirely. It depends on what you play really in your deck. You can play like Kroot to help you mass Soul Charge, or you can just use Cider to spam Soul Charge 2 every single turn to build up the soul for that. So really it's up to personal preference. Gleipnir is also another really good attacker that you can use alongside Yatagarasu. So Gleipnir has 2 effects. The first effect is on place, Counterblast 1, can Soul Charge 1 and put any card from your soul into your hand. So she kind of helps you to put key pieces from your soul that you might have in your soul back into your hand, which is really good in increasing consistency. But mainly, if you play her with Yatagarasu, you play her for her on attack ability, which is on Regalia Circle. When she attacks, you can Soul Blast 1 and give it plus 10,000 power until the end of turn. Now this procs every time Gleipnir attacks. So her first attack, or his first attack, he's going for 20k, and then you use Yatagarasu to restand it, give it plus 10, attack again, and use its effect again to get another plus 10. And it's hitting for what, 10, 20, 30, 40k on the second swing, which is pretty beefy. And this combo only requires 2 Soul Blasts, which you should be able to easily pay. So yeah, if you want to experiment Yatagarasu with cards other than Yggdrasil and Norn, those 2 cards are very viable cards that you guys can try out. Overall, Roxy still prefers the Yggdrasil / Yatagarasu build. It has just a bit more stability. It has a bit more draw power in terms of Norn, giving the potential activated draw every single turn. And Yggdrasil overall is just a really good backup grade 3 ride as well, being a restander alongside Norn. The 7 attack combo that I explained in this video also comes up surprisingly often. And generally we feel like it's one of the most game ending and strongest combos that Yatagarasu can do. So yeah, for now this is our lineup. Do let us know what you think about this lineup. Do leave any suggestions or queries in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next video. For now, bye guys.